Welcome to this episode of Abide in Me, How Jesus Models Secure Attachment with God. This series is a survey of the Gospel of Mark, looking for how Jesus models what is now called secure attachment, which is the physiological, emotional, cognitive, and spiritual experience of what is often called salvation or regeneration or being conjoined with God or enlightenment, individuation, even becoming spiritual. Through the series, we will discover the benefits of becoming securely attached with God, which is the transformation of one's life into one of joy and satisfaction. Hello, this is Clark Eccles, and welcome to the podcast Abide in Me, How Jesus Models Secure Attachment. When Jesus said, "Abide in me and I in you," it wasn't simply a metaphor or a parable for a way things could be, but he was describing a real connection with God in which love and life flows into and through us and transforms us and gives us that joy and happiness that we all are seeking. In modern language, it is to have a secure attachment bond with God, which extends to the parts within you and attachment bond with others. The person who's securely attached has an active experience of self-worth. They have an unconditional regard for other people's worth. They are silent when typically one would be verbal, being defensive or explaining or justifying. The securely attached person looks for and affirms others' goodness and is affirming and optimistic, so not complaining. They're conscious of and can identify and express the emotions they're feeling. They typically have a mindfulness practice. They remain in the present moment, even during conflicts. And their joy, their satisfaction in life rests in the non-duality that they experience in their life. It extends to their public experience of life, the non-duality of mercy and justice, for instance. A person who's securely attached has clarity regarding what it is to be selfish versus self-care. They consider themselves on a journey, in process, unfinished, on the way. In ancient literature in the Chinese called that the Tao, the way. The securely attached person has a sense of being a part of and connected to all living beings, and so lives from a sense of abundance rather than the fear of scarcity. So that is what Jesus was describing. Now, how I've come to this view is kind of a long story. I was a pastor in a Christian denomination that drew its inspiration from the writings of Emanuel Swedenborg, who was an 18th century philosophy, theologian, and mystic. And I was ordained in that tradition and was a pastor. And I loved preaching and teaching, but I didn't have the gift of administration. So my ability to lead a congregation was really limited. And along the way, also, I discovered that I had a great passion for facilitating small groups because a couple of wise people had been studying people like George Gurdjieff and Jung, and especially Maurice Nicole, who wrote commentaries on what Gurdjieff taught, and created a model for a spiritual group, a spiritual growth group, which people experienced spiritual transformation. It was just amazing, and it's been wonderful. And I've been doing that for many years. And then eventually it came to the point where I needed to leave being a pastor. And so I got licensed as a mental health counselor. And I started doing that many years ago and was licensed in 2010. And as a mental health therapist, I was so excited about learning about how the brain works, right? The science of psychology. And I was introduced to attachment theory and internal family systems. And so that when I retired and I again looked to the gospel, and as I read, in this case, the Gospel of Mark, I saw Jesus modeling secure attachment. And that's the inspiration for this podcast. The other inspiration is that life went on during all those years. We got married, we had children, and that's such an incredible blessing. And then I experienced a number of significant losses along the way. And I began to suffer from the grief. And I took a while, but I recognized how the five noble truths of the Buddhist teaching are an actual practice that took my theology, that taught me about God and spiritual life, and gave me a practice. I actually took on a significant Dharma practice and meditation. And during that time, I developed a relationship with suffering, right? I had a new perspective about grief. And again, that really contributed to my appreciation for what spiritual growth groups do and how these theories of attachment theory and internal family systems and others are so helpful in people's well-being. So now I'm at a place where I have actually begun studying seriously Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching and seeing how being along the way is available to me. And it was going through all that I went through that it seems to have brought me to this place where I have something to offer. And so it begins with this observation of how Jesus models being securely attached. That to me looks at the gospel and looks at it with spiritual eyes. It universalizes all that Jesus Christ has to offer. It makes it available to everybody. I do believe that Jesus is the Son of God. He's my Savior. And that's not enough, right? I have a practice that brings the life of Christ, right? The divine love into my life in a new way. That's what's motivating me to share with you in this podcast. I hope it is helpful to you in discovering your secure way to achieve secure attachment and a new sense of joy and satisfaction in this present moment along the way. I pray this has supported your transformative life, whatever practice you have in your life. I want to thank Solomon Keel for his music, and I want to invite you to make a contribution to this work if you wish and are able through the PayPal link. And I invite you to continue to listen to the next episode. You be well.